My life shattered the moment I read that text. I can't wait to hold our baby, you and me, finally starting our real family. Those weren't the words of a man having a casual fling. This was something much deeper. As my trembling fingers gripped Dean's phone, the stark truth punched me in the gut. My husband of 20 years, the man I loved and trusted implicitly, had been lying to me in the most cruel and unforgivable way. Dean strolled into the kitchen, whistling some off-key tune. His nonchalance made my blood boil. "What the hell is this?" I thrust the phone in his face. His expression went blank. "Where did you get that?" "Don't play dumb with me. I saw that text from Sienna. Are you telling me you've gotten her pregnant?" Dean's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Instead of denying it or looking remorseful, his face contorted with anger. "You had no right going through my things," he shouted. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you. You always overreact about everything." My mouth hung open in disbelief. "Overreact? You've been having an affair and got your mistress knocked up." "Don't call her that." Dean's nostrils flared. "Sienna is my soulmate. We're planning our real future together, something you could never understand." A massive lump welled in my throat. I wanted to cry, to scream, to make the pain go away, but I couldn't give him that satisfaction. Sucking in a breath, I steadied myself. "Get out," I said in a low, trembling voice. "Take your soulmate and get the hell out of my house." Dean chuckled darkly. "You think you can take everything from me? I'll take you for every damn penny you're worth in the divorce. The kids, the house, my business, it's all mine. Don't you dare bring the kids into this." As much as his infidelity stung, the thought of losing Phoenix and Harper was infinitely more terrifying. They should know what a lying, cheating failure of a mother you really are. "I'm the failure?" I barked out a bitter laugh. "You're the piece of scum throwing away 20 years of marriage for some cheap thrill." A thunderous stomping came from the stairwell. Phoenix and Harper stood there in pajamas, eyes wide with shock and confusion. Dean smirked smugly. Well, let the truth-sharing begin." In that moment, my heart shattered into pieces. How could I explain this nightmare to my babies? What would they think of their poor excuse for a father? Dean opened his mouth, likely to spew forth more venom, but I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't. Not in front of them. "No," I shouted, silencing him. "You don't get to play the victim here, Dean. You brought this on yourself." I turned to my beautiful children, putting on my bravest face despite the torrent of emotions raging inside. "Everything is going to be okay, I promise." Whether they believed me or not, I couldn't tell. All I knew was that my family's life had been irreparably blown apart. And somehow, some way, I'd need to pick up the pieces. The next few days were a blur of anguish. Dean's callous revelation kept replaying in my mind like a sadistic movie on repeat. How could the man I loved, the father of my children, be so cruel and heartless? Phone calls and texts from friends and family poured in, offering thoughts and prayers. I appreciated their kindness, but no words could heal the gaping wound in my soul. This betrayal cut much deeper than anyone realized. Finances became an immediate concern as I tried to access our joint accounts, only to find them completely drained. That lying bastard had cleared us out behind my back, likely to fund his new life with his soulmate and unborn child. I tried not to vomit at the thought. When Phoenix and Harper came home from school that fateful afternoon, the pained looks on their faces said it all. News traveled fast in our small town, but I refused to let rumors spread before we got the full story. We gathered in the living room, an uncomfortable silence hanging over us like a hammer about to drop. Finally, Harper spoke up in a timid voice. "Mom, what Dad did, is it true?" I pulled her and Phoenix into a fierce embrace as hot tears streamed down my face. "I'm so sorry you two had to find out this way. Yes, it's true. Your father has been unfaithful and plans to leave us for another woman he got pregnant." Twin gasps of shock and dismay escaped their lips. Phoenix furrowed his brow, the hurt quickly turning to rage across his cherubic face. "That total piece of crap!" He shot up from the couch, fists clenched tight. "I'll make him pay for this bullshit. That low-life scumbag isn't going to get away with destroying this family." "Phoenix, calm down," I implored, grabbing his wrist before he could storm off. "Violence solves nothing. We can't stoop to his level." "But, Mom, we can't just let him off the hook. He lied, he cheated, he screwed us over in the worst way." I know, honey. I cupped his face in my hands, staring into his eyes that so resembled his father's, except now all I saw in them was a simmering fury. Which is why we're going to fight this another way, one that ensures your dad faces real consequences for what he's done. Harper wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders, a haunted look flickering across her face. How? He took all our money already. What else could we possibly do? Brushing my daughter's hair from her brow, I gave them both a determined look. We're just getting started. Your dad wants to wage war on this family? Well, I've got news for him. He hasn't seen anything yet. It's time to fight back and make him realize just how big a mistake he's made. Phoenix and Harper exchanged an uncertain glance, but I could see the flames of retribution igniting behind their eyes. There would be no more tears, no more wallowing in self-pity. Dean had awoken a vengeful beast, and though the road ahead looked grim, I would stop at nothing to ensure he paid dearly. No one, especially not the man who once vowed to cherish me, would get away with decimating my family like this. Dean wanted to see what I was made of. He was about to find out. Over the next few weeks, Dean's betrayal cut even deeper as we learned more sordid details about his secret life with Sienna. The money he stole from our accounts, his hidden credit cards racking up debt, the lies upon lies he told me. It was almost too much to stomach. The hardest part was seeing how it affected Phoenix and Harper. They tried to put on brave faces at school, but at home their anguish was palpable. My once bright, cheerful kids had grown sullen and withdrawn. How could their own father inflict such emotional trauma? We tried to go about our daily routines, but Dean's looming presence haunted our every move. The splitting of our assets through divorce proceedings promised to be an ugly battle of his making. One evening after dinner, Phoenix slammed his palms on the kitchen table, startling Harper and I. "This is such bullshit," he shouted. "That lying sack of crap gets to just walk away and start over with his pregnant mistress after everything he's put this family through?" I opened my mouth to calmly diffuse the situation, but Harper beat me to it. "You're right, it's not fair," she said in an ominous tone, "which is why we need to take him down a few pegs." Phoenix arched an eyebrow skeptically. "Oh yeah, and just how do you propose we do that, sis?" A mischievous smirk played across Harper's lips. "Well, for starters, we make sure the truth about Dad's shady dealings comes to light. All those secret credits, the money trails, his lies about his work travel, we hit him where it hurts and expose every last skeleton." "Harper," I warned. As much as Dean deserved to face consequences, I didn't want my kids going nuclear. But Phoenix was nodding vigorously. "Hell yes! We've got the tech skills to dig into all his darkest secrets. No more letting him hide like a coward in the shadows." My anger flared, reminded of Dean's gutless way of reducing our 2-decade relationship to ashes. Still, there was a right way and a very wrong way to go about this. "Listen, you two, as satisfying as that sounds, we can't just go rogue and try to take down your father ourselves. Revenge tactics like that never end well." Harper rolled her eyes so dramatically I half expected them to get stuck. "Oh, please, we're not talking about revenge, Mom. Just karma. Making sure Dad faces the appropriate fallout for his own crappy choices that blew this family apart." The kernel of truth in her words gave me pause. As difficult as ethics could be, Dean was ultimately the one to upend all of our lives for his own selfish reasons. He reaped those consequences, not us. Phoenix must have read the shift in my expression, because he inched closer with a conspiratorial look. "Harper and I can be real surgical about this, Mom. Wait for the right opportunities. Catch Dad contradicting himself or showing his true colors in public. With a few well-timed truth bombs, we can control the blast radius." My head was still spinning, but I couldn't deny the tantalizing allure of Dean being hoisted on his own petard. He brought this hellish situation into our lives. Why shouldn't he face the ugly realities head-on? Drawing a fortifying breath, I lifted my chin and gave a single, determined nod. "Okay, we'll do this, but we do it smart and play the long game. Your father won't know what hit him." Twin devilish grins answered me, and I felt a perverse sense of satisfaction. They always did take after their dear old mom. The storm clouds were gathering, and Dean's reckoning was on the horizon. With our plan to expose Dean underway, an unexpected door opened thanks to some of his former friends and coworkers. Apparently, news of his sordid betrayal struck a nerve with people who previously respected him. It started with a text from Frank, an old buddy of Dean's who used to join our family for holidays. Saw the crap going down with Dean. What a freaking dirtbag move on his part. If there's anything I can do, holler. At first I dismissed it as well-meaning but ultimately empty words. That is, until more messages from other unlikely sources began trickling in, all expressing anger at Dean's actions and offering to help any way they could. I'll admit, my initial instinct was to rebuff these overtures born of pity. The last thing I wanted was to become the subject of town gossip and rumor-mongering. But Harper saw an opportunity that I'd been too proud and gun-shy to capitalize on. Are you kidding me? She scoffed after reading one particularly scathing text about Dean from his former business partner. These people hate Dad's guts now. We'd be idiots not to use that hate to our advantage. Phoenix chimed in with a sage nod. For real, this is like having sources and informants working against Dad from all sides. If we pool intel, maybe we can find the biggest bombshells to drop. As much as the petty side of me still recoiled, I couldn't deny the sound logic. These weren't just strangers rubbernecking at our private trauma. They were Dean's once trusted inner circle who now reviled him. Their anger was legitimate, and their insider knowledge could prove invaluable in dismantling his lies piece by piece. So I started having private meetings, coffee clatches, and phone calls with these unlikely allies. At first, it was mainly hollow attempts at sympathy and offering useless advice about divorce lawyers. But once I redirected conversations away from pity and toward Dean's actual transgressions, a very different story began to take shape. It turned out the man I thought I knew was merely the product of extremely skilled deception. Dean's workaholism that kept him away on endless business trips, actually just cover for romantic rendezvous with multiple side chicks over the years, his success heading our town's biggest industrial company, aided by cooking the books and siphoning funds into his own accounts. Even the blowhard, alpha male persona he put off was a calculated front, because apparently Sienna had the real goods on what a sniveling, subservient weasel he could be in private. With each new unsavory revelation, my disgust toward Dean calcified further. All while Phoenix and Harper's eyes shone with the promised inevitability of karma being served ice cold. In just a couple months' time, we had more than enough damning evidence to bury Dean in an avalanche of public and legal humiliations. Now it was just a matter of waiting for the right moment to start the chain reaction that would obliterate his falsely cultivated good name. One afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived at our doorstep, Sienna's own mother, eyes red from either crying or a wicked hangover. When I answered the door, she barged past me into the living room, lips trembling. "You're Lila, right? Dean's wife?" She spat out the word like spoiled milk. I need to know the truth about my daughter and that lying sack of crap." Phoenix, Harper, and I exchanged a look. This was it. The snow had started rolling toward the avalanche. Squaring my shoulders, I leveled my steely gaze at the distraught woman. "Have a seat, Mrs. Sims. You're going to learn things about Dean that'll make your blood boil." As she crumpled to the sofa, anguished eyes pleading for answers, I felt a fierce sense of satisfaction. Dean had made his bed, and we were going to make sure he got buried underneath it. After spilling every last sordid detail about Dean's never-ending betrayals to Sienna's poor mother, something inside me hardened to steel. For too long, I had been the victim while that unfaithful snake slithered free without a care in the world. Well, not anymore. As Mrs. Sims broke down in heartbroken sobs, her illusions about her precious daughter's soulmate shattered, I felt Phoenix and Harper's presence flanking me, like warriors ready for battle. Our audience had been witnessing Dean's deplorable actions through rose-colored lenses. With the unvarnished truth now unveiled, the gloves were coming off. "So that's the full story," I stated flatly, once Mrs. Sims somewhat regained her composure. "Dean's lies have hurt enough people. It's time he faced the consequences." Phoenix cleared his throat. "Which is why we've been gathering all the evidence, documentation, everything to bury that lying sack of—" "Phoenix," I chided, raising a quieting hand. As much as I agreed, we needed to stay composed. For now. What my son means is, we've uncovered numerous instances of fraud, deceit, illegal financial dealings, and more. All roads seem to lead back to your daughter's involvement as well, Mrs. Sims." The devastated woman's face went pale, a fresh wave of nausea passing over her features. I almost felt a pang of sympathy before quashing it. She and Sienna were far from innocent victims in this. "But how?" Mrs. Sims sputtered. "How could Dean and Sienna perpetrate such evil against you? Against all of us?" The answer was obvious to me, because Dean was a selfish, narcissistic sociopath who always put his own warped needs before anyone else's. But rather than voice that, I let the truth speak through hard evidence. I slid a thick manila folder across the coffee table, photographs and bank statements spilling out. Here's how: by lying, cheating, and stealing at every turn to fund their false reality, while leaving my family and his other victims destitute and broken in his wake. Mrs. Sims began leafing through the documents, horror etching into her features with every new revelation. Creative accounting that drained funds from Dean's company. Multiple mortgages taken out on our home without my knowledge. A veritable harem's worth of jilted lovers and families Dean had conned over the years. When she finally looked up at me through haunted eyes, I saw resignation replace her denial. "You poor woman. How could one man be so evil? So intent on destroying everything in his path?" She shook her head slowly. "He and my Sienna deserve the harshest judgment for their actions." Exchanging a meaningful look with Phoenix and Harper, I felt the fever of retribution burning within all of us. We held the detonator. All that remained was choosing the right time and place to let the charges rip. They'll get exactly what's coming to them. Harper said in a determined voice usually reserved for student council debates. "We've planted the seeds far and wide, Mom. Now we just need to give them a little more time to bloom before striking." Mrs. Sims regarded my kids with a new sense of awe and respect. "You two have been masterminds of this whole operation?" Phoenix smirked, that devilish look reminding me so much of his father in his younger, less monstrous days. "What can I say? Payback's a bitch, and we plan on making Dad the biggest one of all." "Language," I chided automatically, though my scolding lacked any real heat. The simple truth was I had awoken a vengeful beast in them. In all of us. We would stop at nothing to ensure Dean's sick facade crumbled under the weight of his innumerable lies and indiscretions. As Mrs. Sims rose to leave, still reeling from our damning disclosures, she turned back with gratitude shining in her reddened eyes. "Thank you for seeing justice done. I only regret not realizing Sienna's true nature sooner, before enabling this whole tragedy." I surprised myself by placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We're all victims of a master manipulator, but not for much longer." The woman offered a grim nod of solidarity before departing, leaving Phoenix, Harper, and I alone to strategize our next moves. The dominoes were all meticulously lined up and awaiting that fateful tipping point. Soon, Dean's multitude of sins would be spectacularly and publicly demolished. My former husband's awakening was going to be a brutal one. It was the annual Founders' Day street fair, a beloved tradition in our small town where everyone came together to celebrate our community's rich history. The perfect place for our interplanned reckoning against Dean to finally detonate. As Phoenix, Harper, and I wandered among the booths and crowds, we passed by Dean shamelessly flaunting Sienna on his arm like some trophy to be paraded. My blood boiled at the sight, but I tamped down the anger. They would get their comeuppance soon enough. First, we struck subtly during the opening ceremonies, with a few deftly edited video clips spliced in alongside the usual founders' bios. We highlighted Dean's lengthy rap sheet of corporate fraud and embezzlement from his former company. A hush fell over the crowds as his misdeeds and upcoming legal battles were exposed. Dean's arrogant grin instantly collapsed as he registered the displayed allegations, his eyes darting wildly about until locking onto my smirking visage. Busted. Next came well-timed text blasts circulated to Dean's remaining inner circle, divulging the truth about Sienna's grifter past and her myriad efforts to entrap other wealthy married men, along with a paper trail of evidence. As the whispers began echoing all around them, you could see the couple's unified front cracking. Every time Dean tried confronting us, denying his guilt, or defaming us to anyone who'd listen, we simply played another hand from the stacked deck of his undoing. Angry phone calls from irate ex-lovers emerged, berating him for his serial infidelities. Sheafs of purported evidence implicating Sienna in real estate swindles were accidentally shown to her own family, eliciting horrified reactions all around. With each carefully aimed strike, Dean and his partner in crime grew increasingly isolated and cornered before the entire town's watchful eyes. No more hiding behind lies and deception. The truth was scorching them in all its unvarnished glory. Finally, as the evening festivities began with Dean trying in vain to exit the fair unnoticed, Harper sidled up to the announcer's stage and grabbed a microphone. "Excuse me, everyone," she called out, immediately commanding the crowd's attention with youthful charisma. "I'd like to share a few words about the true meanings of family, loyalty, and commitment, virtues which have sadly become foreign concepts to certain individuals among us." Phoenix and I exchanged a sidelong grin, sensing the final phase was about to begin. Turning toward the stage, I watched Harper's dramatic performance with glowing pride, even as Dean's face drained of color. "You see, my father always preached to me and my brother about the importance of being good, ethical people who take care of their loved ones," Harper continued, her voice morphing from folksy to furious. "But in reality, he's been the lowest form of lying, cheating scumbag for longer than we could have ever imagined." A gasp rippled through the crowd as my brave daughter launched into a full recap of Dean's myriad betrayals, holding nothing back regarding his adultery, theft, and overall broken psyche that allowed him to so callously destroy our family's lives. Phoenix even joined in, pulling up video clips and bank statements on a projection screen behind them. "This is the true legacy of Dean Masterson," he roared to the shocked onlookers. "A selfish, narcissistic con artist who cares only for himself, the exact opposite of everything this community stands for. So what do you say, everyone? Isn't it time Dean finally got the public humiliation and legal reckoning he's deserved for so damn long?" A chorus of angry jeers and shouts instantly swelled up from all corners of the park. Furious glares and pointing fingers zeroed in on Dean like ravenous vultures, savagely encircling their prey. Beside him, Sienna's face mirrored the devastation and confusion of knowing her grift had imploded spectacularly. Through it all, the disgraced man could only meekly gape at me, eyes full of impotent rage and disbelief that I had so thoroughly dismantled and discredited him before everyone he sought to impress. In that moment, I saw the vain, pathetic shell of narcissism Dean truly was, and I reveled in every ounce of his anguish. Approaching us warily, flanked by several uniformed police officers, Dean worked his mouth but couldn't seem to form words. For the first time in his miserable life, he was utterly speechless. I allowed the smallest of smiles as the cops began handcuffing him. "It's over, Dean. Your reign of lies and treachery is done." As he was led away to a chorus of jeers and insults, I pulled my children tight and felt an overwhelming sense of relief flood over me. Against all odds, we had endured Dean's maelstrom and emerged victorious. Our journey for justice was finally complete. In the aftermath of Dean's very public downfall, the shockwaves reverberated through our community like a thunderous explosion. Everywhere he went, pointing fingers and scornful whispers followed. His reputation, so carefully cultivated over decades through lies and deception, now lay in smoldering ruins. For a while, the disgraced man tried to maintain a facade of indignant anger. "This is a massive misunderstanding," he kept blubbering to anyone who would listen. I was set up by my psycho ex-wife poisoning everyone against me. But with the avalanche of evidence we presented, Dean's flimsy denials shattered upon impact with the truth. Incriminating documents, recordings of his own admissions of guilt, testimonies from enraged families and former lovers, all of it left zero doubt that he was a serial philanderer, con artist, and thief of the highest order. What made his downward spiral even more disastrous was the harsh legal consequences rapidly materializing from all sides. The industrial company that was his crowning success, they pressed criminal charges and civil suits for his financial crimes and misappropriation of funds, seeking restitution. The IRS launched a sweeping investigation into his tax evasion and money laundering schemes. Multiple women came forward with paternity suits demanding child support, having been strung along and lied to by Dean's empty promises of building families together. And then there was Sienna, Dean's supposed soulmate and future baby maker. While the pregnancy turned out to be a false alarm, Mrs. Sims and the rest of her family took the calculative gold digger to the proverbial cleaners. They drained Sienna's assets through bitter legal battles, ensuring every last seed of treachery she tried planting got salted over until nothing remained. Through it all, Dean grew increasingly manic and despondent. His arrogant bravado crumbled as the inescapable truth claimed everything he'd ever amassed: his business, his riches, even that perfectly manicured public image as a self-made success story. All of it exposed as a pathetically hollow mirage perpetuated through an endless deluge of deceit. I'll never forget the day Dean came slinking back to my house in hopes of groveling for the forgiveness he never deserved. When I answered the door, I was shocked by the pitiful sight of him, doughy cheeks sunken, expensive suit rumpled and disheveled. "Lila," he croaked out before breaking into dry heaves, shoulders shaking. "My God, what have I done? What kind of depraved, monstrous person have I become?" For the briefest of moments, the shell of the man I once loved shone through, a flicker of the good-natured, hard-working spirit buried underneath his avalanche of sins and fatal character flaws, and unbelievably, I felt a pang of regret for how far we'd been driven apart by the venom of his betrayal. But it was far too late to salvage any good remaining in his blackened soul. "You did this to yourself, Dean," I said in a low, eerily calm voice. "You chose to become this thing, to sacrifice everything good you once had just to feed your own insatiable, selfish impulses." He reached out to grasp my arm, and in an uncharacteristic act of pity, I didn't flinch away. "Please, anything to make this nightmare stop. I'll give you whatever you want. Pay any price. Just make this all go away." I sighed, shaking my head slowly. The puddle of self-pity and desperation pooled at my feet was simply too vast for even the strongest raft of forgiveness. The consequences of his sins had claimed their ultimate prize, his very sense of self. "I can't help you anymore, Dean. Whatever personal hell you're suffering is one you brought on yourself." His frightened, childlike stare reminded me too vividly of those last flickering moments we shared as an intact family. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a real life with people who actually matter waiting for me." Pulling my arm away with barely restrained disgust, I turned and headed back inside, closing the door on Dean's shuddering, anguished wails. He had always sought the spotlight through elaborate lies. Well, the truth had finally burned away every last illusion, leaving only the charred husk of dishonesty behind. It was oddly fitting, I suppose, the biggest facade of all finally crumbling to dust in the wake of deceit's all-consuming fire. Dean's reckoning was complete. Even as Dean's world imploded in a fiery blaze of treachery and deceit, my family emerged from the ashes like a phoenix reborn. While his reckoning unfolded, a new dawn of hope and redemption awaited us. It started small at first. A new job for me at a respected accounting firm that didn't see me as a victim, but as a capable professional with a wealth of hard-won life experience under her belt. The relief of financial stability cannot be overstated after Dean's despicable money grabs nearly left us bankrupt. For Phoenix and Harper, their steadfast roles in dismantling their father's lies proved instrumental. Not only did it showcase their remarkable integrity and determination, but the admissions offices at several elite universities took notice. Glowing letters of recommendation poured in from allies whose respect they'd earned, culminating in incredibly generous scholarship offers that effectively paid for their undergraduate studies in full. The collective look of pride swelling in my chest when presenting them those acceptance packages is something I'll cherish always. After the hell Dean dragged us through, they more than deserved every accolade for persevering with courage and honor. I couldn't ask for better kids. Our family's physical and spiritual renewal took many forms. With Dean's millstone of betrayal no longer weighing us down, we took a much-needed vacation that first summer. A modest beach house rental, but absolutely luxurious compared to the animalistic state of constant anxiety we'd all been operating under. There was laughter again, genuine, uninhibited cackling that echoed along the shoreline as brilliant orange sunsets danced across the rolling waves. Simple joys like splashing in the shallows or roasting s'mores into the late evening hours. For so long, our lives had been drained of color and verve thanks to Dean's selfish machinations. Now, we drank deeply from the well of life's replenished vibrancy. But as idyllic as our beach trip was, nowhere felt more triumphant than returning to our newly rechristened home in town. That painful reminder of Dean's sins finally exorcised, replaced by all the love and comfort a true family dwelling should provide. I'll never forget our first night back, sitting around the living room fireplace and remarking on the profound sense of rebirth we all felt. Harper's eyes shone with the amber glow of the crackling flames as she voiced what we'd all been thinking. Everything that Snake did, it was all for nothing, she said quietly. In the end, he just shattered his own life into a million meaningless pieces while we picked up the shards and rebuilt ourselves into something better. Phoenix nodded sagely beside her. The ultimate loser. Couldn't stop chasing hollow lies and validations until the truth came along and crushed him anyway. We lapsed into a respectful silence, a silent toast to the justice and karmic rebalancing we'd all witnessed. As much fury as Dean had sparked, there was no need for smugness or bitterness now. The force of nature he represented had been neutralized through our resilience and unity of purpose. An age-old story of good triumphing over evil in the most personal of battlegrounds. Eventually I cleared my throat, drawing their attentions. We owe a debt to those who stood by us, who helped us stare down that man's depravity, and ultimately win. I smiled at them both, welling up with fierce maternal love. But the real victory goes to you two brave souls. After everything you witnessed, you could have easily turned to darkness and anger. Instead, you both channeled it into unshakable determination and righteousness. Twin smiles of proud acknowledgement met me. Lord knows they'd both had more than their share of brooding teenage angst in recent months. But in our family's most dire hour, their courage and integrity shone through in blinding rays of hope. So what's next for the comeback, kids? I asked playfully. Considering your academic futures are set to be whatever you dream? Phoenix and Harper exchanged a look, some unspoken mutual understanding crackling between them. Then my son reached over and gently squeezed my hand. For now, just focusing on being a real family again, making up for all that lost time thanks to Dad's crap. His eyes shone with unshed tears of regretful relief. We've got a lot of living left to do, Mom. And this time, nothing's going to stop us. Pulling them both into a fierce hug, I savored the unconditional love binding us together. United by the galvanizing trauma of Dean's deceits, yet risen far above the damage he wrought. His misdeeds may have sparked the journey, but the true victory belonged to our family. This was our new dawn, and we would face it together, stronger than ever before.